What time did you check your news feed this morning? Was it before your feet hit the floor? Was it while you were having that first cup of coffee? Were you surfing the headlines? Be honest, while you were driving? What about at dinner? Was the news playing in the background? Was it the last thing you heard before you went to bed? Well, the producers of this program, Lighthouse TV, are launching a brand new morning program to help you look at the news a little differently. And tonight, you'll be getting a sneak preview. Don't go away. If you watch this program, you know that my friend and producer, I call him my great producer, Jeff Coleman, joins me at the end for the closing commentary. It's a relationship that's changed both of our lives for the better. Before the end of the summer, Jeff will launch a new live news magazine program to help continue the conversation we've started right here. He'll still be helping me with this program every week, but Monday through Friday, you can watch Jeff and me from time to time look at the day's news from a slightly different perspective. Before Jeff joins me to explain, watch this trailer for the new live daily morning show.
Over half of Americans watch TV to relieve stress, but we're still growing more fearful and anxious. We wake up to it, we have it on in the car, we fall asleep to it, we're on alert every minute of the day, distracting ourselves with the noise of news. But fear is winning. We're lonelier than ever. But what if there was a place somewhere in this streaming 24-hour world where you could find a few minutes of encouragement and hope, where you could start the day not looking away, but looking straight ahead with fearlessness and courage to the bigger story, one that says there's a creator who loves you, who isn't surprised by anything, not a tough diagnosis, a broken relationship, or a string of failures, or who wins the election. Every weekday on Lighthouse TV, we're inviting you to be part of the greatest, truest story ever told. We're calling the program Morning Light. You'll see the world differently, and the things we'll talk about will change your life. I'm Jeff Coleman. I hope you'll join us.
Wow. Well, Jeff, this is such a refreshing approach to morning television, but it's really the opposite of almost anything that's on TV today. What's behind the big idea?
Well, it wasn't my big idea. The owners of this station, the founders, Dan and Margaret Huber, really said, we think there needs to be a Christian program in the morning that isn't selling you anything, that isn't adding to your anxiety, but that's actually giving you two things that are missing from television, which is hope and encouragement. You know, we wake up right away and our hearts are beating fast because we think there's something we're missing if we don't have our news feeds on. So we're walking from the bedroom to the coffee pot looking for headlines, and by the time we've absorbed the first 2 or 3 headlines, we know what we're supposed to worry about. So Dan and Margaret really saw this window and said, isn't there a way that we could, Lighthouse TV, come into this space and add something to the conversation, not that lulls people to sleep and say, just look at pictures, everything is fine, because we know it's not fine. But to say, could we take some of that morning curiosity and channel it in a way that actually helps people find the big story? Hey, remember, you're here for a purpose. Remember, you're not an accident. Remember, there's a plan for the day and you're in it.
Yeah, God's on the throne. You know, that's a wonderful thing. What a blessing, because I know that this life, and especially the way so many of us are wired, is we're more anxious than anything else. I mean, we're anxious about everything. Right. And so to have a shot to be encouraged or to have hope, you know, I mean, what a wonderful thing. I mean, is the morning show able to in some way encourage people with the good news of the gospel, or?
Yeah, the whole underlying story of the gospel, that there is a God who loves you, who has forgiveness and redemption and grace available to you, who wants to have a relationship with you, who has forgiven and has a path to forgiveness available to you. That's all the story, right? And that's what all news leaves out. News, general mainstream news or legacy media, even the streaming media, and especially podcasts, they're designed to retain you as a viewer and to keep you there. To do that, you have to constantly have at the bottom of the screen breaking news, alert, You know, there's an urgency. Everything has an exclamation point. All the graphics are in hard red, yellow. There's a concern that says you need to worry about this, because if you don't. But what happens with the gospel? It walks in and says, no matter what happens today, you're safe and secure if you're in Christ. And so is it a preaching tool? And some people might say, well, a news program shouldn't be preaching at me. A news program should just be giving me the facts. Well, people are leaving out a lot of facts when you're extracting the spiritual dimension and the element from it. We know this isn't just a series of facts that we're trading in. We know that there are implications for those facts in light of eternity, if you believe. If you don't believe, there's still a consequence to not believing, but at least for people who are believers, people especially who say, hey, I'm a Christian. What does that mean when you see a bridge collapse in Baltimore, when you experience a heat wave, when you read stories about global warming? Do you just go right into the debate and say, I don't believe in that, or I do believe in that, or I need to go out and buy an electric car? And think about that. One piece of news changes your whole behavior. So what if we looked at that news differently and said, our behaviors will not be informed by fear, but our behaviors will now be informed by the larger story, which says God is in control of all of this. Just a quick morning reminder with your coffee.
Yeah, that's a wonderful perspective. I mean, because most of news, I've worked in secular TV news, and that's really based on making money and on capturing viewers, right. and it's not necessarily loving them, but you want to capture them so that your advertisers can talk to them, and you've got to get them to come back all the time, which is why, like you said, there's always all the little things to get you to come back or to stay tuned, but you don't feel loved by the end of those telecasts. You don't feel like hopeful at all. Like as a matter of fact, for most people, there's probably fear that things are just getting worse and worse and worse, and there's no hope for anything better. How are you going to tell your stories differently? I know like you and I share a love of history and of presidents and the like, and we were just talking about how people look at presidents in a one-dimensional way, but they don't take it.
Is he our guy? Is he for our policies?
Right.
So one of the challenges that we've had in building this show was to not just be news. So we'll begin the clock, the top of the hour, with the big headlines of the day, but then we're going to move into things like history. By the way, this is a statewide Pennsylvania show. All over Pennsylvania, no matter where you drive, no matter what road you take, you are part of an extraordinary story that, from William Penn forward, has been a story of God's miraculous work in the life of a particular place. Pennsylvania was founded with a specific idea, which was this is going to be a religious freedom zone, and this is going to be a place where you and God get to work out your convictions. And on every corner, there'll be a church, and they'll have their doors open, and the bell will ring, and you get to choose which one you go into. Within that framework, then, we're going to have an ordered citizens, we're going to have people who respect the laws, and we're going to help each other, we're going to be benevolent. That was the big idea for Pennsylvania. What happens when you lose the story? When you forget, oh, why are we here again? Was this just random? Every wave of immigrants, Germans, Italians, all the way to the Vietnamese and the Congolese and the Nepalese who have come to Pennsylvania, have all come here seeking some level of freedom, much of it religious freedom. What happens when we lose that story and you're running into somebody on the street and you don't understand their language? Well, it's friction. I don't get who they are. Where did they come from? Who brought them here? Who invited them here? This is our place. Wait a second, did you know that as a steward of Pennsylvania, you're part of a story that says, by the way, William Penn had this idea. When you look at City Hall and you see William Penn pointing his hand down at Penn's Treaty Park, you know at the bottom of where his finger is pointed is a place where Native Americans experienced the first contract that was binding and the first contract that was never broken. because William Penn came to Pennsylvania and didn't decimate the Indian population, but built friendships and relationships. That's the story we're a part of. So every now and then, well, at least once a week, we're going to go on the road and tell a story and say, hey, did you know about this church? You know what happened here? Do you know who's buried in that graveyard? Do you know that great store, Wanamaker's? Do you realize that was a Christian who led that store? And he's the first guy who comes back with a money-back guarantee. So I'm saying a lot because I'm so excited about the chance to tell a story that for most of us would be lost completely because nobody else is doing it in television today.
Yeah, well, God has prepared you so wonderfully for this moment in time. I mean, I don't know if the viewers all know about your marvelous background, but at one time you
wild ride.
Well, you were the youngest. Weren't you the youngest elected Pennsylvania state representative when you were elected?
I was a baby. Yeah, I was 25 when I was elected, and now going back and advising my 25-year-old self to run for office at the beginning instead of maybe a more seasoned period of life, I probably wouldn't advise me to do that. But God was gracious to give me a lot of experiences early that I've learned from. But he's also taken a person that was very ambitious and very driven to accomplish big things and really crushed those ambitions to say, hey, why don't you just do what you want me to do? So when Dan and Margaret said, what about this morning show? For me to say yes to that 10 or 15 years ago, didn't feel like that would be in the plan. Yeah. But God's plan ends up being so much more interesting when you just say yes to these things. And I have no idea where it's going to go.
You know, you talked just recently with me about surrendering. Yeah. You know, like the importance of surrendering your life to the Lord. You know, a lot of people believe in Christ, but they haven't surrendered themselves to his lordship and said, you know, Lord, here am I, take me where you would have me be. And that seems
like getting a boss, right?
Yeah.
It's like signing up and saying, yeah, I'm signing up, but I'm my own boss here. And that's, I think, the way I've lived so much of my life, to say I get to pick and choose where I apply my time, where I apply my money, my resources. I get to choose what our family is going to do. I get to decide where my kids go to school, all these things. You know, I get to decide. But this idea of surrender really pulverizes that whole notion and says, you don't belong to you. You know, you were bought with a price. And so if you're going to be on TV, if you're going to have a public microphone, don't use it for yourself. That's a hard thing to do because it's such a powerful medium that can easily be transferred to your own ambitions.
Right. So we have all these big news stories that are already on the platter and are yet to come in the fall, a presidential election no less, which is a big deal.
What a time to be launching any TV show.
So what's the perspective? You know, Morning Light is this great new show. Mm-hmm. How do we fairly tell our viewers, many of whom are Christians, some may not be believers, but what do we tell them? How do we interpret for them the election that's unfolding? Do we take sides? How do we rightly divide the news and yet still provide hope and encouragement for people in the midst of all that?
It's a big temptation, I think, for anybody who has an audience to take the eyeballs that are on you and the hearts that are engaged with you and not direct them for a purpose that you have. So I have had a history in politics, but I really don't identify, I don't lead with, I am a person who has been in politics. I say I'm a Christian. What does that mean? That means that at the end of my life, I do not want I was a Republican or a Democrat or an independent on my tombstone. I would rather people be able to look at the election and say, okay, as a Christian, am I seeing the candidates on the national stage exhibiting wisdom? Am I seeing candidates on the national stage or the state stage or the local stage running for school board exercising love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, self-control, especially for people who have signed up and said they identify as Christians? So can we look at the actions of political leaders not as gawkers? Now, I don't want to have a giant audience like the Roman Colosseum or like an Eagles game, and we're just yelling down calls and plays to people around the field. I think a Christian has the ability and should almost be saying, I'm a participant, but I am not a combatant in this. I don't have a person who I want to win or lose at the end, because I have one reputation that defines who I am, and that is my relationship with Christ. That changes everything. That allows you to love your Democratic neighbor and your Republican neighbor and your neighbor who doesn't want to vote. And you don't get, as a Christian, you don't get to say, I'm done with you, because I don't agree with the sticker you just put on your car or the sign you put out in your yard. So every day, if we can come into this saying we want to help you, say, hey, something happened last night. There was a debate. There was a controversial commercial that ran, or one of the candidates said something. But instead of going into all the tabloid kind of tawdry aspects of a campaign, can we talk about something meaningful? What did they actually say? What did they mean? And then lead them to say, now you as the viewer have a conscience, and you get to act on that piece of information. We're not going to tell you what to do.
Well, you know, I think to myself, you know, all the time that I just want God to be pleased with me. You know, I want God to be pleased with what I'm doing, and then you know, but I'm in the world like all of us, and I say to myself a lot, and I know the things that the world likes and the world rewards. You know, like the world rewards certain kinds of behaviors with, you know, lots of attention, with big numbers, with lots of money, all those kinds of things, and so. You know, it's hard to not give in to the temptation, but it's so important to not give in to the temptation of, well, we're doing this for numbers, we're doing this for audience, you know, like.
So let me take your point, what you're saying here. You've been a part of news organizations, and you know that many of these news organizations at the beginning of the day, or the day before the beginning of the day, before the news has even happened, said, this is the story we're going to talk about all day. This is going to be the breaking news. So there's not much that's going to interrupt that, because based on data, we know that we're going to be able to retain a particular market share. Right. So all the guests, all the panelists, the host, have to be so caffeinated and amped up to essentially sell the company newsline. And I don't want to sell conspiracies here, but I think everyone kind of knows that if you turn into this network, you get cherry flavor. If you turn into this network, you get root beer. If you turn into this one, you get apple pie. You know, it doesn't all jibe, but everyone has a line. I would love for people to, at the end of the day, watch this program and say, well, they treated it fairly. That was an honest assessment, or that was a hopeful assessment. Yeah,
that's a spirit-filled way of looking at it, and a wonderful way to look at it. And that's what makes me excited about Morning Light. You know, nothing like this exists right now on television. You know, everything exists with an eye toward, you know, how do I get more of your attention so I can sell you something? Yeah. You know, so that I can make you a regular viewer to help me make more money. That's right. You know, but not for me, not because I love you and I want you to know and I want you to be able to make a good decision, a reasoned decision, especially if you're a Christian person, a reasoned decision. So that I think sets Morning Light apart. Who's going to see this show?
Well, obviously anybody that tunes in, but the beauty of this program is all over the state of Pennsylvania. Obviously, if Lighthouse TV is on your cable system, you'll see it there. It's also broadcast. But now through we're looking at creating a product that is not contingent upon you sitting in front of your television. So Apple TV and Roku and Fire Stick, all of these options are available. So in much the same way that the big networks now have recognized that people want to consume news where they are with a lifestyle while they're doing other things and not having to tune in at 6:30, Lighthouse has recognized the ability to make it available streaming everywhere. So yes, you can watch it live anywhere in the world, although the news will be Pennsylvania, a lot of it, and the content Pennsylvania focused. But wherever you're traveling, you'll be able to get it, and whatever device you're on, you'll be able to watch it, and it won't cost you anything. Yeah. There's no paywall.
I know we're in Delaware right now, and in parts of New Jersey, and in parts of Ohio, which is really, really exciting. So the reach is ever growing.
It is. But the hope is at some point, once you move into that streaming world, that content gets shipped around throughout the day based on what people want to watch. So. Yeah.
Well, we're talking to my friend Jeff Coleman, my great producer, State of Independence's producer, about the new daily statewide morning show that begins this summer on Lighthouse TV. It's called Morning Light, and will be available like this program on broadcast, streaming, and cable platforms all over Pennsylvania. We'll be right back.
You're watching Joe Watkins' State of Independence on Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Share your comments about today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org.
We're talking with my friend Jeff Coleman about a brand new program he'll be hosting with veteran journalist Deborah Pinkerton, Morning Light, right here on Lighthouse TV. No matter where you live in Pennsylvania or Delaware or New Jersey or Ohio or around the country, you'll be able to tune in at 9 a.m. Monday through Friday to see Jeff and Deborah on the on-air team. Very exciting stuff. Jeff, this is so exciting, but did you ever see yourself doing something like this? I mean, I'm sure you probably thought of yourself maybe in the governor's seat one day. Something that you could do very easily, given your background, your expertise, and what you know about government. But here it is, you're doing this.
Growing up, I loved news. And, you know, I was in that generation of Peter Jennings and Dan Rather and Tom Brokaw. You know, so those are the guys that, if you want to learn how to talk, if you want to learn how to walk or what to wear, you look to those guys because they really commanded presence on TV. A little word about my co-host, Deborah Pinkerton. I mean, this is an extraordinary person. She's not only a believer, so she's oriented in the right way. She does not see the world as hopeless. She does not see a news story as a news story that isn't connected to people's hearts and the reality of how the gospel can transform lives. So you're going to see a lot of beautiful content coming from this great journalist. She started as a desk assistant on a program called Meet the Press on NBC 30 years ago. So she's watched news change from being something of a serious business to being infotainment. And I think this will be a great opportunity to have someone who knows this business now remind her profession that journalism really does still need to be a part of our daily lives. It plays a role. Without journalists curating events, telling us what's important, kind of saying, hey, think about this, we have a challenge in the country.
Well, the world's very different now, of course. You know, now everybody's a journalist, or can be, because we've all got, or most of us have mobile devices of one kind or the other, and the capacity to video something as it happens, and for that to become a news story. And so it's a very, very different world than the world that you grew up in.
Everybody is reporting.
That's correct.
Everybody is creating content, and this is a program that will be so content rich. So you can have areas like really wonderful, spirit-filled Christian physicians bringing a perspective about depression and anxiety and health that's very different. You're going to have people who are involved in finance who are saying radical things like, why not, don't look at your net worth or your 401k or your stock options as the measurement of whether or not you have achieved success. Why don't you look at how much you're giving away as a measurement of success? Really? I mean, what other television show is there, a finance program where people don't just tune in to say, well, how can I be rich like you?
Right. So where does this fall in the scale of, you talked about what we know now as infotainment, where we have news programs that basically are there to entertain you, to keep you, engaged.
Well, I hope this doesn't put anybody to sleep or at 9 o'clock in the morning. but it isn't going to be clownish. I think that's the difference. There's a purpose and a seriousness and a vision for the program, which really will say, hey, you've heard what if you were up at 5 or at 6 or at 7, you have heard what everyone else has said. You kind of know how the world views the events that are happening. But when you get to 9 o'clock, if you want to put the filter on of a Christian worldview and a perspective that says, by the way, there is an answer to that. Here's what's happening. I mean, the Surgeon General released a report the other day on depression and anxiety, and he's declared an epidemic of loneliness in America. And all of the diagnosis is correct. I mean, it's a roadmap where we are not getting sleep. We have suicidal thoughts by increasing numbers. We're addicted to opioids. We have all of it. It's all there. The community is disintegrating. We don't join organizations anymore. And here is this answer over here in the form of a community that is centered around a person that really gets you off of thinking about yourself completely in the form of Jesus, right? And all of those answers are at least resolved in some way, explained through that. But none of the Surgeon General's report leads you to that.
Yeah.
It leads you to hopelessness. And what are we going to do about this? We need to increase funding for mental health. And I'm not opposed to increased funding for mental health. But ultimately, it's going to take communities reconstituting, people finding community in church where somebody cares about you for who you are, not about how much money you give or what country club you belong to. I mean, that's the amazing thing about a relationship with Christ. It comes with a lot of friends and family.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're blessed to be able to share that good news in the midst of all the bad news that we get hit with every single day.
There won't be a shortage, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But to point people to Christ is like so incredible. Is it possible for somebody to be watching Morning Light and to come to Christ?
I hope so. I mean, I hope what people will see, I mean, this is certainly not a program where you're going to say at the end there will be an altar call, because I think people can often feel manipulated by Christians who are on TV. But I do think that it's going to, if God's Spirit is at work in you and drawing Him the way that we believe that He draws people to Himself, I don't want something to be contradicted. I want to help in that decision. So yeah, it's true. And a lot of other people believe it. And no, not everybody believes that this is our last chance, as a country, as a planet. I mean, this is, if you think about the trajectory, the arc for most of the news on TV, most of it ends with something that leaves you saying, this is too big, there's nothing we can do. And our message is, not only is there someone who is holding up the world in His hand, but He's holding your life. He cares about you. He knows your name. He knows how many hairs are on top of your head, all of it. So I hope it will offer something not just new and entertaining for the mornings, but some hope and encouragement.
Yeah, sounds so incredibly exciting. Well, Jeff, I can't wait to see what God's going to do through you, Deborah, and the Morning Light team. I think it's safe to say there's nothing like it in the streaming and broadcast world today. And if God is in it, it will be a tremendous help to so many people, to help them see the world through the lens of truth, not the chaotic, fear-inducing formula used by so many news organizations. Please know that we'll be praying for you and the Morning Light team in the days ahead, brothers. So we're so excited for you.
Well, Joe, thank you, and we'll be counting on those prayers very much.
Amen. Amen, brother. Well, if you have questions or comments for me or Jeff, use the comment box at joewatkins.org. I'd love to hear from each of you. I'll read and reply to each message. So for Jeff Coleman and the entire team here at Lighthouse TV, thanks for being with us tonight. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching. God willing, I'll see you again next week. It's going to be so cool.
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.